Mark, after 19 years, we're eliminating your position, my boss said, without emotion. Please clear out your office by the end of the day. My name is Mark Delaney, 56 years old, and until that Monday morning, I was the lead systems architect at Norwell Dynamics in Austin, Texas. For nearly 2 decades, I'd been the foundation of the IT division. From dial-up internet to cloud-native platforms, I'd weathered 3 CEOs, led every migration, onboarded every rookie, and spent countless holidays in the server room, not once asking for recognition. So when Carl summoned me to his office with Haley from HR already seated, I knew what was coming. I'd seen the signs weeks ago. I understand, I said with a small nod. No complaints, no bitterness. Just quiet resignation. At my desk, I caught the glances of the younger developers I'd mentored. Most looked away quickly. They didn't know the depths of the systems I'd built, or the legacy code still quietly humming in the background. They didn't know the hidden admin credentials or the multi-layered architecture I'd fortified. I began packing a framed photo of my kids at a state fair, a ceramic mug my son made in 8th grade, and the same potted plant that had somehow survived 19 years under fluorescent lights. Chloe from marketing appeared beside me face-tight with disbelief. "Mark, I just heard. This is insane, you are this place." I gave a tired shrug. Companies change direction. She was angry for me. Her voice started to rise. "After everything you've done, it's fine," I said softly, cutting her off. Really, it wasn't. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. On my way out, Carl stood in his doorway, watching me leave. No handshake, just making sure I was actually walking out. What none of them realized was that I had become the most indispensable person in the entire building. Not because I was flashy, but because I was meticulous. I had documented everything. Years ago, I created internal audit trails at the request of legal during a small compliance scare. I kept those protocols and backups, always. In my car, I looked back at the 10-story glass tower where I'd spent the prime of my life. My security badge, renewed 19 times now, sat on the seat beside me. I turned the key and drove home. They had no clue what Wednesday would bring. Norwell had started as a cramped suite in a strip mall. I joined when my daughter Rachel was in 2nd grade. She's finishing med school now. I passed up better-paying roles because I believed in loyalty. My wife Karen used to joke that the server racks were my real family. Maybe she was right. I knew every corner of Norwell's infrastructure, every patch, every back door. The skeletons buried in legacy systems, I'd mapped them out. I'd kept them running through 3 failed transformations. Then Carl arrived 5 years ago, young, fast-talking, all buzzwords and no depth. He called us IT assets instead of people. 6 months ago, he brought in a consultant, Ethan Cross. Tailored suit, perfect smile, Ivy League degree splashed across every platform. And from that moment, I knew the writing was on the wall. They started holding quiet strategy meetings behind closed doors. Conversations stopped whenever I walked by. About 3 months before my dismissal, I noticed subtle changes to my system permissions, minor restrictions on admin controls that no one mentioned. I could have raised a flag, but instead I observed. I documented everything. "You've been distant lately," my wife Karen said one evening as we sat on the back patio of our home in Round Rock, Texas. The cicadas buzzed in the summer air. "Is everything okay at Norwell?" I nodded, taking a sip of my beer. Just corporate changes. Seen it before. But this wasn't just change, it was isolation. I was being edged out. Meeting invites stopped landing in my inbox. Emails about infrastructure decisions no longer copied me. Tasks that used to be mine were now being handed to 20-somethings who'd only been there a year. Then one morning, while cleaning out old logs during a routine security sweep, something no one bothered with anymore, I came across a memo. A company-wide IT restructuring plan. It had never been shared with me. It named Ethan Cross as the new director of systems transformation. My position omitted entirely. That same day, a different anomaly surfaced. The financial monitoring tool I'd set up years ago flagged repeated payments to a vendor I didn't recognize, Westbridge Technology Partners. Curious, I looked deeper. The company had been formed just over a year ago. Its business address, a mailbox at a UPS store in suburban Dallas. The payments, initially a few thousand, had grown steadily over the past 18 months. Regular approved invoices, all appearing legitimate, but the prices were padded 10%, 20%, sometimes more. I said nothing, just saved the files to my encrypted drive and kept watching. Sometimes the man in the background sees the most, because no one thinks he's looking. The morning after Norwell let me go, I sat in the stillness of my home office, staring at my personal laptop. No calendar alerts, no meeting pings, just quiet. Karen brought me a mug of coffee and gently set it down beside me without saying a word. After 21 years of marriage, she knew when to give me space. "I'm running to HEB," she said. "Need anything?" I shook my head. Once she left, I reached into the locked bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a small black flash drive. Years ago, when legal asked me to design a compliance tool to monitor for internal fraud, I had insisted on remote backups. They approved it, then forgot it existed. I plugged it in and opened the files. Inside were months' worth of financial reports, approval logs, IT access histories. Many of them documents the average employee wouldn't even know existed. And there it was, $1.87 million in payments to Westbridge Technology Partners over 18 months. The signature approvals traced back to Norwell's CFO Craig Dalton, the same Craig who'd praised my loyalty in a company-wide email 2 years earlier. A little digging revealed more. Westbridge was registered under a man named Peter Dalton. A LinkedIn check confirmed the connection: Craig's brother-in-law. They were funneling company money through inflated software licensing fees, splitting the excess. All hidden behind the illusion of modernization. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, feeling something settle inside me. Not anger, something colder, sharper, focused. For nearly 2 decades, I'd protected that company, stayed quiet, been reliable, while they quietly erased me like I was nothing but old code. My phone buzzed. A message from Logan, one of the junior engineers I'd mentored over the past 2 years. "Sorry about what happened. Total crap. Ethan's already moving into your old office." I stared at the message. Didn't reply. Now I understood. Craig and Carl had to get rid of me before someone connected the dots. They assumed firing the aging systems guy would erase the evidence. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I opened my email and started drafting a message to the board of directors at Norwell Dynamics, then paused, finger hovering over the send button. It was too direct, too easy to dismiss as a bitter rant from a recently fired 52-year-old systems architect. I needed more than accusations. I needed precision leverage, something airtight. I deleted the draft and began strategizing. The next day, Wednesday, was perfect. Board meeting day. Quarterly reports on deck. Bonuses up for approval. The timing couldn't be better. I shut the laptop and stood by the living room window, looking out over our quiet neighborhood in Round Rock, Texas. The trees swayed gently in the wind. It was the street where Karen and I raised our boys, where we'd grown roots. For the first time since being let go, I smiled. Wednesday morning, I parked across from Norwell's main campus. People funneled through the lobby turnstiles with coffee in one hand, swipe badges in the other. In the passenger seat beside me was my laptop logged into a decoy internal email system, one ID set up years ago for penetration testing. It mimicked the company's domain but wasn't traceable in the internal directory. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I launched the first move. A message to Carl Brenner, the VP who'd fired me. Subject line, irregular vendor payments. Urgent review required. I included a high-level summary of what Id uncovered about the Westbridge transactions. Just enough to get his attention. I left out the family connection for now. If Carl was involved, he'd panic. If he wasn't, he'd scramble to investigate. Either way, I'd get answers. At 9:45, my phone rang. Carl's name flashed across the screen. I let it roll to voicemail. "Evan, this is Carl. We need to talk. That email, call me immediately." I didn't. Instead, I sat up in a corner booth at a nearby cafe, ordered black coffee, opened my laptop, and waited. By 10:30, another email pinged, in this time from HR. "Mr. Grant, we've received communications from you that may violate the terms of your departure from Norwell Dynamics. Please refrain from contacting employees or disclosing confidential matters. Further action may be taken." Ah, so they were going with the legal scare tactic. Too bad I hadn't signed any separation agreement. At noon, I visited the local credit union where I kept a private safe deposit box. Inside was a second flash drive, older, less complete, but with crucial records from earlier security audits and access logs. Among them, a signed request from CFO Craig Dalton to extend access permissions on our financial processing system, dated 18 months prior. That was the same month the Westbridge payments had started flowing. Back at home, I found 3 missed calls on my cell. Carl Vanessa from HR, and now Ethan Cross. I hadn't expected Ethan to jump in this soon. Interesting. I checked my personal inbox. A message from Logan, the young analyst Id mentored. "Hey, Evan, people are freaking out. They said you sent an email about fraud." Ethan called an emergency meeting. "We're losing access to past files now." What's happening, poor kid? Caught in the middle of something he never asked for. I replied briefly, "Don't get involved. Just watch." At 3 p.m., the landline rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. I picked up, said nothing. "Evan, this is Craig Dalton." His voice was too calm, too measured. "We need to talk about that email you sent. I think you've misunderstood a few things." "Is that so?" I said. "These transitions can be messy. If you're concerned about financials, there are internal channels. The board will be interested," I interrupted. Silence followed. "No need to involve them," Craig said. "Why don't we meet tomorrow? Just you and me. We can figure this out." "I'm busy tomorrow," I said. "Besides, I think the board might want to know more about Westbridge Technology Partners. And your brother-in-law, Peter." His sharp inhale told me everything I needed to know. "You're making a serious mistake," Craig said, finally, his voice tight. "We can fix this. A generous severance, a glowing reference, whatever you need." "Goodbye, Craig," I said, then hung up. Within 10 minutes, I got an email from Melissa in HR. My severance package had suddenly doubled along with a confidentiality agreement that forbade me from ever discussing anything related to Norwell Dynamics. They were scrambling, but they still thought they were dealing with a disgruntled 52-year-old tech veteran trying to cash out quietly. They had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning brought clarity. ED spent most of the night poring through old archives, server logs, email backups, connecting dots I'd once dismissed as routine. But now they told a different story. The Westbridge scheme wasn't Craig's first trick. 3 years earlier, just after he became CFO, I spotted a similar pattern. Inflated consulting invoices to a firm called Canyon Ridge Strategies. The services were vague. Operational alignment support, agile synergy evaluation. Buzzwords that meant nothing. I traced the business registration. The CEO of Canyon Ridge, Amanda Dalton, Craig's wife. No website, no employees. Just a mailing address linked to a P.O. box in Austin. But the bigger reveal came from the emails. Carl Brenner, my former boss, wasn't just aware of the payouts. He'd signed off on several of them. In return, his department's budget was consistently increased while others were quietly slashed. He'd been hired specifically after the previous VP of Technology started questioning vendor payments. Even Ethan Cross, the consultant with the Stanford smile, was tied in. His firm had been fast-tracked through procurement without the usual approvals. His role wasn't modernization, it was removal. Specifically removing the one guy who might notice the paper trail, me. The scheme was smart, just believable enough to pass audits. Real services, real vendors, just marked up 15% here, 20% there. Spread over time, it totaled nearly $4.3 million. I compiled everything spreadsheets showing year-over-year increases, business records, linking the LLCs to Craig's family email threads, revealing Carl's complicity. Then I did something unexpected. I called Richard Tran, a retired board member I'd worked with years ago when we rebuilt Norwell's access control system. He still sat on the board's audit committee. "Evan Grant," he said, answering on the second ring. "Heard you left Norwell." "Not by choice," I replied. "Rich, I need 15 minutes. You want to see what I have?" He paused. "Does this explain why Craig and Carl looked like ghosts at yesterday's finance meeting?" "Probably," he chuckled. "I always figured you knew where the bodies were buried. Where can we meet?" We sat at a quiet park about 10 minutes from Norwell's headquarters. I handed him a sealed envelope and a flash drive. This is everything I told him. Dates, dollar amounts, vendor links, approval chains. I'm not here to beg for my job back. I'm not suing. I just want the board to know the truth. Rich looked over the envelope, then back at me. "Why come to me because you're the only one who still reads audit logs?" I said. "I've seen you ask questions the others don't." He nodded slowly. "There's an emergency board session tomorrow morning. Finance committee first. Your timing's impeccable, Evan. Am counting on it." As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Karen. "Some guy named Ethan came by. Said it was urgent. I told him you weren't home. They were getting desperate." Good. Later that afternoon, 2 job offers landed in my inbox from rival firms in the Dallas tech corridor, both offering roles above what Aid held, both with hefty signing bonuses. I didn't respond. Not yet. This wasn't about finding a new job. This was about finishing what they started. Word had spread quickly through the Dallas tech scene about my sudden availability. Recruiters started circling. Offers came in. I ignored them. This wasn't about landing a new job. This was about finishing what they started. That night, using login credentials that should have been disabled, sloppy handoff, Ethan and I accessed Norwell Dynamics' internal mail server one final time. From a sandbox account I'd created years earlier for phishing simulations, I queued an email to every board member. Subject line: "Before you approve tomorrow's bonuses." Read this. Attached was a full-time stamped report of the Apex and Canyon Ridge schemes, names, routing numbers, vendor records, forged approvals. Everything. Friday morning broke clear and still. I sat with a mug of black coffee on the porch of our Richardson home, watching the neighborhood slowly stir. No commute, no office, just peace and purpose. At exactly 8:00 a.m., the message hit every board inbox. By 8:17, my phone lit up. Unfamiliar numbers, assistance, legal panic. I let them all go to voicemail. At 9:00 a.m., Norwell's Emergency Finance Committee meeting began. Richard Tran would be seated at that boardroom table, watching expressions shift as the truth landed. At 9:32, my phone buzzed again. A text from Jeremy, one of the junior techs ID mentored cops, just showed. Craig and Carl in separate rooms. Ethan looks like he's about to puke. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't reply. Everything was unfolding exactly as it should. At 10:04 a.m., Norwell's in-house counsel called. This time I picked up. "Mr. Grant, this is Allison Rhodes with Corporate Legal. We need you to come in immediately to discuss what you've submitted to the board." "Am available by phone," I said. This conversation really needs to happen in person. No, it doesn't, I said, calm and cold. Everything I know is in that report. Everything I have is backed up in multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me or my family, full copies go to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 major media outlets. Silence. The board is taking this seriously, she said eventually. Several executives are already on administrative leave. They've asked for your cooperation. I've already cooperated, I said. My part is done. I hung up, then drove out of the city to a quiet cafe in McKinney, one of those spots that didn't ask too many questions, and poured strong coffee. By lunchtime, local business blogs were buzzing. Executives at Norwell Dynamics under investigation for financial misconduct. No names yet, but they were coming. At 2:03 p.m., Richard called. "It's a bloodbath," he said, without preamble. Craig cracked first. He's trying to deal, throwing Carl under the bus. Carl's denying everything, and Ethan's claiming he was just a hired gun. But the board isn't buying it. Internal audit found more, too, he added. Looks like the total may cross $4.5 million, embezzled across 3 years. I closed my eyes and nodded. I'd been close. "The board wants to meet with you," Richard said. "Not about your old job. They're creating a new role, Chief Information Integrity Officer. Full executive status. You'd report directly to the board." I'd expected something like this. Still, it caught me off guard. "I'll think about it," I said. That evening, I sat on the patio with my wife, Karen. I told her everything. She listened quietly, just like she always had. When I finished, she asked one question. "What do you want to do?" A good question. The revenge part. That was done. The men who'd forced me out were being shown the dorsum in handcuffs. They'd underestimated the quiet guy in the back corner who saw everything. Justice had arrived, measured, silent, precise. But going back to Norwell. That meant returning to the building that tossed me aside after 18 years. Could I do that? Did I want to? "I need time," I finally said. Later that night, I logged into LinkedIn and posted a single update, the first in over a year. Never burn bridges. Just let them collapse under the weight of their own corruption. Within minutes, messages started flooding in. Former colleagues, old friends, even a few people who'd once dismissed me as just the quiet back-end guy. By Monday, everyone in the Dallas tech industry knew. The quiet systems architect from Norwell Dynamics had taken down 3 senior executives without ever raising his voice. That morning, I walked into the Norwell building for the first time in over half a year, wearing a navy blazer I hadn't pulled out since my daughter's college graduation. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take, then stood a little straighter. "Welcome back, Mr. Grant," he said respectfully, handing me a visitor badge. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent, but this time I wasn't riding up as a background staffer. 10 board members sat around a gleaming mahogany table in the top-floor conference room. Richard Tran gave me a subtle nod as I entered. The interim CEO, formerly the COO, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Mr. Grant," she began, "thank you for coming. What you uncovered. It's shaken this company to its core." I remained quiet. The forensic team has since traced nearly $5.2 million in diverted funds, she continued. Federal authorities are building their case. Criminal charges are underway. Still, I said nothing. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. "Mark," he said, "the board has unanimously agreed to create a new executive role, Chief Information Integrity Officer. It comes with full privileges reporting directly to the board. We'd like to offer you that position." I pulled out a slim folder and laid it on the table. "Inside you'll find my conditions," I said. "They're non-negotiable." The CEO opened it. Her eyebrows arched as she read. "Company-wide audit authority. Independent veto on financial tech decisions. Control of compliance systems." I gave one nod. This company lost millions because no one was looking in the right places. That won't happen again. Silence. You have until noon, I said, standing. I've got other offers. As I reached the door, Richard asked quietly, "Did you plan all this from the start?" Mark, I paused and looked back. I didn't plan to be fired after 18 years. But everything after that, that was just me doing what I always did, solving problems. At 11:47, the call came. Every condition had been accepted. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office on the 18th floor overlooking downtown Dallas. The skyline gleamed in the afternoon soon, a constant reminder of how far everything had come. Brian Caldwell had pleaded guilty. He was cooperating with investigators in exchange for a lighter sentence. Carl Jennings was fighting the charges, claiming ignorance despite the documentation. Ethan Barnes had fled to Brazil. The feds were working on extradition. Most of the money had been recovered. Norwell survived. My old department now reported directly to me. Stephen, who I'd promoted, handled daily operations with the kind of quiet competence that reminded me of a younger version of myself. There was a knock on the glass door. Karen stepped in, smiling. "Lunch?" "Absolutely," I said, grabbing my jacket. As we walked past the dev teams, the chatter dimmed for a moment. Not out of fear, but out of respect. They knew what I could have done. They also knew I chose something better. In the elevator, Karen slipped her hand into mine. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought for a moment. The anger had burned out months ago. What remained wasn't joy exactly, but it was peace, fulfillment, a closed loop. "I'm good," I said. Outside, the October breeze swept through the plaza. My phone buzzed. Text from Richard Tranboard: "Just approved your FY security budget increase. Unanimous vote." I smiled. No negotiations, no resistance, just trust. Karen glanced over. "Good news." I slipped the phone into my pocket. "Nothing urgent," I said. "Just thinking about bridges. Some collapse under the weight of neglect. Others, when repaired with care, become stronger than they ever were. I had rebuilt this one right, and this time it would hold. This story reflects a timeless truth that's deeply relevant in today's American workplace. Quiet integrity often outlasts flashy ambition. Mark Grant, a seasoned systems architect, was overlooked, pushed out, and underestimated. But his methodical preparation and unshakable values ultimately exposed deep-rooted corporate corruption. His story is about revenge. It's about restoration done the right way and on his terms. Advice for real life. In an era of layoffs, rapid change, and culture fit buzzwords, never underestimate the long-term value of doing your job with quiet excellence and keeping thorough records. Don't let frustration push you into rash retaliation. Document everything, understand your legal rights, and let truth be your most powerful tool. If you're pushed out unfairly, focus not on proving people wrong, but on proving yourself right. And when bridges burn, remember, some deserve to fall, but others are worth rebuilding with better design.